the crack in the ice. Peace never holds forever. Not real peace. The years after the Dominion's fall were called peace. Yes, merchants traded, Torwin sang. Kalani planted, even the Char found neighbors who bowed instead of spitting. But beneath it, tension grew like ice under strain. In taverns, smugglers said, 1 human equals 100 soldiers. In markets, children played the human, staggering, shouting, "I'm not done yet," before laughing and rising again. In core academies, scholars warned, kindness can conquer as surely as fleets. It was a peace filled with songs and rumors, and the core hated both. The council fractures. I stood in the chamber when the Grand Council cracked apart. The Kalani spoke first, staff ringing like a bell. They bled for us. Seat them here. To deny them is to deny us. The Shah roared, claws striking stone. When we were dirt, they gave us honor. Spit on them, and you spit on us. The Taruan sang 3 notes that made the banners quiver. They carried our children. And the core replied with silk-wrapped poison. They are reckless, one said, gems heavy on his sleeves. They spread too far, another said, infecting with kinship. They are dangerous, whispered a third. Their smiles are chains. The chamber shook with shouting. And then the humans entered. No crowns, no armor, only patched uniforms, ink-stained fingers, eyes lined from funerals. They smiled, and the chamber fell silent. The containment accord. The core gave their fear a name, the containment accord. They told their citizens it was prudence, told merchants it was stability, told soldiers it was peace. On parchment it looked harmless, tariffs, inspections, patrols. In practice, it was a noose. Galani convoys stranded until fruit rotted. Torun caravans fined until their drums fell silent. Shar miners inspected until their lungs filled with dust. And always, human ships delayed, diverted, denied. Everyday voices. A Kalani farmer whispered, "My child died while inspectors checked papers for stamps they invented that morning." A Toruan mother said, when drums were confiscated, humans built new ones from their crates. "My son plays again." A Char miner spat blood and laughed. Inspectors broke our couplings. Humans welded new ones overnight. The inspectors fined us for unauthorized repair. And the Dominion remnant growled, "The humans are not saviors. They are storms waiting for excuse." The galaxy split along invisible lines. The first blow. They called it enforcement. We call it the first blow. 7 fleets moved in secret. Kalani corridors sealed. Torun harbors blockaded. Shaw mines seized. Human convoys boarded, medicine taken. The core declared, "This is not war. This is safety." But a Toruan child died in the smoke of a burning cargo hold. Her last word was a human name. On the 5th day, the humans answered. The fall of Harrow Reach. Harrow Reach was fortress and pride of the Accord. Accord ships gleamed, perfect lines, precise warnings, turn back or be impounded. The humans arrived in patched hulls, engines coughing, paint still drying. They gave no speech, they sang. Across open channels, rough and off-key, we keep our word. Then the void tore open. Human ships rammed, marines stormed. A corps commander shouted of order and law until the flames reached their bridges. In one night, Harrow Reach burned. Fortress of the Accord, shattered by ships held together with wire and will. The web tightens. When the smoke reached the stars, the galaxy reeled. Kalani swore open allegiance. Taruan beat war drums until their hands bled. Shah warriors sharpened blades with laughter. But merchants trembled. Border states hedged. Dominion remnants split, some spitting vengeance, some whispering awe. And the core said, see how savage they are. We only sought peace. They chose war. The split widened, fear thickened. The Accord strikes back. The Accord had numbers, fleets like storms, soldiers enough to fill cities. They struck wide, Toruwan harbors shelled. Kalani schools collapsed, Shar mines buried alive. They thought this would snap the web. It screamed, and screaming, it bound tighter. The human answer. Scarred fleets rose again, allies beside them. Kalani freighters rammed patrols. Torun drummers pounded rhythms that synced cannon fire. Char strapped into mechs, roaring with joy. And the humans laughed. I saw a pilot crash through a cruiser's bay, crawl out bleeding, and seal the doors behind him with his body so his squad could live. I saw a woman in a shattered mech tear down Accord banners with her bare hands, throat raw from screaming. I saw soldiers sway from exhaustion, still grinning, still singing, still standing. The great battle of Orthus Gate. Orthus Gate was crossroads, artery, prize. The Accord meant to end it there. Fleets enough to darken the stars. Armies supplied for years. The humans came ragged. Scarred ships, mechs half-patched, allies singing. 9 days of hell. Day 1, fleets slammed like storms. Day 3, Accord troops swept ports, mechs answered street by street. Day 5, both sides bleeding, humans still laughing, Accord still rigid. Day 7, Accord fractured, allies defected. Day 9, the humans stood bloodied, unbroken. The Accord broke. I walked the field after, saw a Kalani child place flowers on human graves, whispering, "Kin." That whisper traveled farther than any broadcast. The 6th lesson. The elder's voice rose, thunder rolling from his chest. The Valkyrie taught us humans fight like demons. The Council showed us they love like kin. The Draenei War taught us they endure beyond reason. The Dominion taught us they do not stop. The Core taught us every strike only feeds their fire. And the War of the Accord taught us the 6th lesson. When you unite humans against you, you do not fight an army. You fight a storm. A storm that bleeds and laughs. A storm that sings in fire. A storm that turns fury and mercy alike into weapons. You cannot cage a storm. You can only survive its passing. And gods help those who forget. Storms do not end, they pass. The War of the Accord did not conclude with a single explosion, nor a treaty signed under velvet. It ended like a fever breaking, shivers, sweat, then a fragile stillness that tastes like metal. The Accord fleet staggered back from Orthus Gate. Blockades dissolved into temporary stand-downs. Inspectors left their clipboards on docks and forgot to return for them. On 100 worlds, citizens woke unsure if they should cheer or hide their children for one more day. Humans didn't cheer, they exhaled. Then they began counting. He touched a bead string at his wrist. Humans count differently than we do. Not just ships and cities, names. They roll them in their mouths. They write them on bulkheads. They sing them until the syllables become rhythm. When the guns went quiet, the first thing they did was build long tables and set out books where anyone could write the missing. The counting of names. On Toruwan piers, drums became registries. 1 beat for the living, 2 beats for the lost, 3 for the not yet found. In Kalani markets, star banners were stitched with white thread, each stitch a cousin. In Shar mining towns, workers chalked the faces of the dead on rock walls, and when rain washed them away, they chalked them again. And humans? They opened the rooms of lists, hallways lined in paper, ink everywhere. Write them, the sign said. We will carry what we can, and what we cannot carry, we will sit beside. You learn a people by how they mourn. Humans mourn aloud. Mercy again, when mercy was tired. The victors had the ancient right to feed vengeance. The galaxy expected it. The Core expected their own turn beneath the wheel. Instead, human envoys walked into capital still stinking of burned insulation and said, food first, hospital second, trials third. Trials third. Not abandoned, merely ranked behind bread and clean water. A corps prefect sneered to a human captain. Is this moral theater? The captain, eyes like sleepless dawn, answered, no, it's triage. The trials. Make no mistake, there were trials. Paper has its justice too, when guided by clean hands. The architects of the blockade deaths, admirals who used inspection rosters as kill lists, financiers who wrote tariffs knowing precisely which clinics would run out of antibiotics first. They were named, faced, wept, justified, were judged. Humans did not hang banners of triumph in the chambers. They hung photographs, a Tauran child with drumsticks, a Kalani nurse asleep upright in a chair, a Char miner grinning under a face of dust. Every sentence was read beneath those eyes. Some begged for execution. Humans refused. You will rebuild what you broke, said one judge. You will pour water until your back aches as theirs did. You will carry stone. An admiral spat. You cannot make me good. No, the judge said, only responsible. What the web looks like after war. Imagine a net torn by shells then mended with red thread. That was the human web. Kalani caravans learned new routes mapped not by stars but by kitchens, where bread was fresh, where water was sweet, where grief had quiet corners. Tauran crews stitched emergency sails with human knots that could be untied with one hand when blood slicked the other. Char miners adopted the human habit of posting fixed books in every corridor. If something breaks, write how you fixed it so the next pair of hands starts on rung 3, not rung 1. Even Dominion refugees, those who had fled their own hard empire only to be drafted as accord fodder, found themselves invited to soup lines run by human medics. Some expected poison. They got pepper. Those who came back the second day brought onions. The new council and the old chair kept empty. The Grand Council reconvened under cracked murals and singed flags. The floor still held the shadow of bootprints that no longer had owners. The Kalani moved to seat the humans as permanent delegates. The motion passed with a roar from half the chamber and a bitter hiss from the other half. Here is the part that still makes my tendrils curl. The humans declined the high chair. They took a seat, but not that seat. When pressed, their envoy folded a paper crane the size of her palm and said, "We are here to answer and to help. We will not reign. Reign is how you end up choosing who to count and who to forget." The Tauran envoy stood and, for the first time in my long years, spoke without song. "Then we will hold the chair for the day you are not allowed to refuse it." The chamber laughed and wept because we all understood the joke and the fear beneath it. Resentments, rinds, and rot. Do not mistake this for a hymn where every chord resolves. Rot remains even in rebuilt beams. A guild of core insurers recalculated risk in a way that accidentally priced Tauran ships out of harbors with the best repair yards. A Kalani minister discovered she had grown so used to human help that she forgot how to argue with her own legislature and wrote to Earth for a template law. A Char foreman shouted human standards at a crew and lost their loyalty for a season because no one wants the name of a friend used as a whip. Humans made mistakes too. A commander assigned advisors like scaffolding instead of like guests, and a market choked on well-meant rules. A medic told a grieving mother, "It will be okay out of habit," and was taught by 100 silent faces that sometimes the right sentence is, "I am here." They learned. They apologized. They wrote it down so the next medic might begin on rung 4. The Accord's last gambit. Cornered power bites. Months after Orthus Gate, an Accord remnant tried one last gambit, a bomb under a bridge labeled Reconciliation Walk. The note said, "We told you they were manipulators." The plan was crude, not in the mechanics, which were clever, but in the assumption that humans would answer with rage that erased their claim to mercy. The device was found by a Char child who had been taught in school to report shiny gifts that tick. She did. The bridge held. Humans arrived with tools, not guns. The remnant cell was found not by security, but by a Tauran grandmother who recognized the twitch of a dust sleeve hiding wire cutters. She slapped the cutter hand with a spoon. I cherish that detail more than any fleet diagram. The work of the broom and the ladle. Young ones love banners. Grown peoples learn the gospel of brooms. After war, glory is the fastest to leave the room. Dirt remains. Humans swept. They scrubbed soot until palms blistered. They rewired lamps. They taught 1,000 ways to make water safe with what you have. Their officers did not only inspect parades, they inspected drains. A Kalani proverb was born: if you want to know a human's rank, watch who picks up the ladle first. The highest ranked were often the first with soup. What songs remember? This matters. Listen. Toruan war songs once ended with a boast. Now they end with a meal. A final verse describes a bowl passed hand to hand to the tired and the triumphant alike. Humans changed the last notes of a people's pride. Kalani festival songs added a stanza in a borrowed tongue, a verse of, "We keep our word," but softened, turned inward, sung as a promise to self when no one is watching. The Shah mining chants, built for rhythm more than melody, grafted in a human habit, a shouted roll call before the shift descends, not for attendance, but for memory. If the list is shorter at dusk, the chant becomes a map for who must be found. The children of the accord. What becomes of the enemy's children when the enemy is a banner, not a face? Humans answered, they become ours, not as trophies, not as penance, but as work. They set up schools that taught 3 histories side by side, how the accord told it, how the Allies lived it, and the ledger of names who did not come home. Some called it brainwashing. Maybe it is. If washing a brain means rinsing out lies and leaving room for the names that must be carried, then perhaps we could all use a basin. The scar on Earth. You think Earth left this as a distant crusade, hands clean except for other people's blood? No, storms leave dents on their own horizon. There were food lines in human cities because freighters went to war zones first. There were empty chairs in human classrooms where teachers had gone to rebuild Kalani schools. There were night terrors and messy divorces and quiet addictions that no anthem will ever name. Humans bled in the marrow as well as the skin. Their choice to keep building anyway is part of why they frighten me. They are not tireless, they are tired, and they proceed. A letter folded small. The human envoy who once refused the high chair sent a letter to the Toruan singer whose 3 notes shook the chamber. I saw a copy. You asked once why we smile. It is not bravado. It is to show our children our teeth belong to our laughter first. We won't always succeed. Hold us to the better version. If we begin to love our own legend more than your lives, throw water on us. Hard. That is the only time I have seen an empire in all but name invite being doused. The Great Charter of the Interstice. From all this, grief, broomwork, letters, songs, the council drafted a new charter. Not a grand constitution. A thin, sinewy document called the Interstice Accords, concerned with what happens in the spaces between wars, corridors, inspections, tariffs, the shape of mercy. It contained 3 human fingerprints. The first food rule: no inspection or fee shall impede items necessary for life beyond a set of hours measured in hunger. The carry rule: if a route is blocked, the blocker inherits a duty to carry the blocked cargo at equal or better speed, or be fined the weight in grain to the nearest hungry port. The names rule: every enactment affecting movement must include an estimate of who will go without if it fails. If the names are guessed wrong, the authors of the law must appear before those people and listen without reply for a full day. Paper is only paper until you write a face in the margin. The quiet betrayals that still happen. Not everyone learned. A core logistics chief rebranded an inspection corridor as a cultural preservation lane to keep Toruan drums out for their own good. He lost the post within a week. Not because humans roared, but because a dozen non-human delegates had learned how to roar like humans and did it for themselves. That, more than any fleet, is legacy. A walk I will not forget. I visited Orthis Gate after the repairs. Children were playing the human beside memorial stones, staggering, shouting, "I'm not done yet." and then rising to run again. An old woman poured water onto the base of a new tree and said to the sapling, "Grow tall enough that their names are shade." A human mechanic sat with her back against a girder, asleep with a wrench across her knees. A Toruan child had draped a scarf over her shoulders so she would not chill. No one told the child to do this. That is the measure. The seventh lesson. The elder drew a long breath. Sparks lifted and died like brief souls. We have spoken of 6. Humans fight like demons. They love like kin. They endure beyond reason. They do not stop. Every attempt to contain them feeds their fire. Unite them against you, and you face a storm, not an army. Here is the 7th, learn not in war but in broomwork and breadlines. Humans would rather build than rule, and that is why their power endures. They turn victory into scaffolding. They turn enemies into neighbors, neighbors into kin, and kin into the hands that hold the next beam. They refuse thrones and accept ledgers. They break their backs under the same weight they assign their foes. And when they are wrong, they invite correction with a wince and an open palm. If you fear them, stand with them when they lift. If you hate them, do not give them another story to sing, because they will sing it better than you can bear. If you must choose, choose the broom. They respect brooms. Coda, the ledger and the lullaby. At the end of that year, in a Kalani school rebuilt twice in 12 months, a teacher taught her class a lullaby from Earth. The children asked why a lullaby for sleep sounded like a march. The teacher said, "Because rest is work, too." A human sailor passing the doorway smiled, then cried so softly no one heard but me. I tell you this so you will understand. The story of the humans is not one thing. It is teeth bared in joy and in warning. It is lists read aloud and brooms pushed in silence. It is a hand that offers bread, then a trial, then a shovel, then a song. If you ever meet them and they smile, remember whose teeth they are and choose which part of the smile you wish to earn. He leaned back, the fire a red coin in his eyes. That is part 7. After the storm, the work. After the work, the songs. After the songs, sleep. For a while.